Hello, this is Warhammer Workshop, and here is episode 5 of Nintendo or Sega Searching for Memories, my gaming podcast. This episode is entitled The History of Donkey Kong. Of course, I won't be going through the entire history. Kong is one of the most famous and tested high-score world records of all video games, with the first game being released in 1981 for arcade. Of course, it was created by the great Miyamoto, which aimed to appeal to American audiences. It led to both the Donkey Kong and Mario franchises, making it one of the single most important series and games of all time. It was also one of the most important games from the golden age of arcade video games, and it is one of the most popular arcade games of all time. The series reportedly stands at 56 million sales, which makes it one of the best-selling franchises of all time. The Donkey Kong Country line is one of the most successful lines and has created some of the greatest Kong games, not to mention scrolling platformer games in general. The Country series has sold over 30 million copies with just 5 games. Donkey Kong Country was released in 1994 and was created by Greg Mayles of Rare, a British video game designer who still works for Rare, now as the creative director, and he has worked at the company since 1989. This was the time when Rare, a British video game company, helped develop games for Nintendo and forged many big hits, such as GoldenEye 007, Donkey Kong 64, the first three-dimensional Kong game, Perfect Dark, and Star Fox Adventures. They are also some of the most successful Nintendo 64 games of all time, and some of the most groundbreaking console games. The Donkey Kong series of games are published by Nintendo and have been developed by many companies, including Nintendo, Rare, Namco, and Retro Studios. The first Donkey Kong arcade game was so successful that it single-handedly brought Nintendo into the North American market. Almost every Donkey Kong game is either for arcade or a Nintendo home or handheld console, starting its life console-wise on the NES 1983, travelling to the Switch 2018 with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, thus giving it a console life of 35 years, making it one of the longest-running console game series of all time. The Donkey Kong series is a technical marvel and one of the most entertaining platform series ever made, with the original arcade game being the first platformer to let you jump, which led it to being the first true platformer game. There are over 30 Donkey Kong games in total, making it one of the largest video game series of all time. As I formerly mentioned, there are 5 Donkey Kong Country games. They span 20 years, from Donkey Kong Country 1994 to Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze 2014. You can also play Donkey Kong in the Mario Kart and Super Smash Bros. Series, and he is the antagonist in the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. Donkey Kong was redesigned for the Super NES in 1994 by former Rare character artist Kevin Bayliss, which was immediately approved by Nintendo. Although changes have been made, Donkey Kong's appearance remains consistent to this day. This is seen on Donkey Kong 1994 for the Game Boy, which marked his re-emergence as a major character and created the symbol of his initials, DK. Kevin was also the voice of almost all Donkey Kong characters in all 3 parts of Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong 64. Although Donkey Kong was the antagonist of the 1981 arcade game, he slowly won over audiences and has since become one of the most famous and beloved villains, not to mention one of the most beloved heroes. In Donkey Kong Jr., you play as Donkey Kong Jr. to try and rescue Donkey Kong, who has been locked in a cage by Mario, thus making Kong the hero and Mario the villain, which many fans did not understand. In Donkey Kong 3, Kong is once again the antagonist. Later, in Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3, Kong takes the role of damsel in distress. In these games, the player controls Dixie Kong and must rescue Donkey Kong. The Donkey Kong Country series also inspired the Donkey Kong Land series and a TV show. After the Rare period, Namco and Nintendo created a trilogy of Kong rhythm games known as Donkey Konga, with 2 of the 3 games making it to America. For this, a bongo controller was released. In 2007, Donkey Kong Barrel Blast was released for the Nintendo Wii. Kong is also seen in many other games, and the other Kong family members are seen in countless games as well. Donkey Kong Jr. appeared in the Virtual Boy game Mario's Tennis, for example, and Donkey Kong is a playable character in most of the Mario Tennis and golf games. Donkey Kong is one of the most iconic Nintendo mascots, and one of the most iconic mascots of all video games. In 2010, Nintendo Power ranked him as their 8th favourite Nintendo hero and 8th favourite Nintendo villain. IGN ranked him 5th in their top 100 video game villains. Empire also included him on their list of top 50 greatest video game characters. The 2011 Guinness World Records Gamers Edition lists Donkey Kong as the 33rd most popular video game character. And in 2012, Games Radar ranked Donkey Kong as the 25th best hero in video games. Donkey Kong has also won many awards and has grossed many hundreds of millions of dollars, and has been the centre of many documentaries and films. Now back to the games themselves. Donkey Kong Jr. is the only Nintendo video game where Mario appears as an antagonist, and gameplay-wise and story-wise it's actually a good game. Being released in 1982 for arcade, it is certainly ahead of its time, along with the rest of the Kong series. Throughout the 1980s it was released for many platforms, most notably the NES. Although the twist made some fans angry and confused, it has still seen some great competitive play, with there being many world records for the game. Donkey Kong Jr. is regarded as one of the top 100 video games by Killer List of Video Games, and it was selected to be among 5 arcade games chosen for history's first official Video Game World Championship, which was filmed in Iowa in 1983. In terms of Kong characters, there are 13 Kongs. Of course, the most famous characters are Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., Cranky Kong, and Dixie Kong. In Donkey Kong Barrel Blast, the player is able to play with 16 characters, 8 of them being members of the Kong family. The Atari 8-bit computer port of Donkey Kong contains one of the longest undiscovered Easter eggs in a video game. This remained undiscovered for 26 years, when Dyer revealed it on his blog, stating, "There's an Easter egg, but it's totally not worth it, and I don't remember how to bring it up anyway." However, the steps to trigger the Easter egg were discovered later by Don Hodges, who used an emulator and a debugger to trace through the game's code. The games have seen nearly all Nintendo platforms and others. The Donkey Kong series is one of the most successful Nintendo series of all time, with Donkey Kong Country being ranked 3rd for the Super NES 1994, selling 9 million copies. Donkey Kong Country 2, coming in 6th place, 1995, selling 5 million copies, and Donkey Kong Country 3, coming in 10th, 1995, selling 3 million. Donkey Kong Country Returns 2010 is also one of the best-selling games for the Nintendo Wii, in 15th place, standing at 6.5 million sales. And some of the Kong games are also top sellers for the N64, with Donkey Kong 64 1999 coming in 7th place, selling 5 million copies, and Diddy Kong Racing 1997 in 8th place, selling 4.8 million copies. There are only a few other series to sell as well for the N64. Donkey Kong has some of the top-selling Game Boy games, with Donkey Kong Land in 14th place 1995, selling 3.9 million copies, Donkey Kong 1994 in 19th place, selling 3 million copies, and Donkey Kong Country 2000 in 27th place, selling 2 million copies, and also Donkey Kong Land 3 1997 in 52nd place, selling 1 million copies. There are only a few other series to sell as well on the Game Boy. The original Donkey Kong arcade game is listed as being the 3rd best-selling game, with Kong also being one of the best-selling arcade game series of all time, coming in 6th place. Top Donkey Kong games include Donkey Kong 1981, Donkey Kong Jr. 1982, Donkey Kong 3 1983, Donkey Kong 94 1994, Donkey Kong Country 1994, Donkey Kong 2 1995, Donkey Kong Land 1995, Donkey Kong Land 2 1996, Donkey Kong Country 3 1996, Donkey Kong Land 3 1997, Diddy Kong Racing 1997, Donkey Kong 64 1999, Donkey Kong Barrel Blast 2007, Diddy Kong Racing DS 2007, Donkey Kong Country Returns 2010, and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze 2014, with nearly 10 of them being great games, thus making it one of the best video game series of all time. And even if it's not as popular as some of the other series, it's one of the most groundbreaking and important video game series in history, which spawned the D-pad and the Mario series. I have been Warhammer Workshop, and you have been listening to episode 5 of Nintendo or SEGA, Searching for Memories, a gaming podcast where I discuss everything within the enterprise. Thank you.